All right, today we're talking with Christian LeFer, founder and CEO of Instant Nonprofit. So, Christian, I usually like to have guys go back and tell us what they did in the military. I understand your dad was in the military, so take us back, tell us where you're coming from, and ultimately how you got into the nonprofit business.
Absolutely. Like many, many people who come to the US from another country, my dad actually came as the oldest of three brothers from France. And he just, loved America. All my uncles did. His brother became a big kind of Harley guy, French biker, if you can imagine that, and went back and forth to France and just did all kinds of cool things with American motorcycles and just loves the idea of America. And so did my dad. And so when he turned 18, he joined the US Navy and he quickly went from a swab, a subtender. He was a charismatic guy and a smart guy and a great conversationalist. And the commander somehow picked up on this and he got to be the driver of the commander's boat. So instead of being in the ship with all these guys and spending time underwater and stuff, he got to take the commander to the parties and all the meetings and muckety muck meet, high level confabs and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
I think he really enjoyed his time in the Navy, and it probably was the best time in my dad's life because of the structure that the military provided. He really needed that. He didn't quite have a lot of that when he was growing up. And so it was really, he always smiled and always, when he showed the pictures and all that stuff, he was always very proud of his military service. And I think I'm the recipient of that secondhand because when he showed me how to do things, he was a brilliant mechanic, worked on Porsches and high-end cars. And I grew up in that environment. And so I learned to fix anything, and now my sons have the rare skill among young men where they can literally fix anything on the planet, and they just, kind of look at it for a minute and then figure it out. And so I really honor my dad for that, and I thank the military for giving him a lot of that experience.
yeah, kind of a lost art, lost trade these days, but there's still a few of them out there. So, the whole mechanically inclined thing. So, talk about your background, how you're growing up, and how you got into business and entrepreneurship.
Absolutely. I grew up in Jersey and we my parents didn't always have the most money, so like you do in Jersey, you just kind of get out there and so I was the kind of kid who would, I had a paper route. I sold customized Christmas cards. I would go out and sell some lawn mowing services, for example, in my neighborhood because I needed to make some money. And then after I sold them and collected the deposit or collected the money, I'd go out and find Joey and ask his grandmother if I could borrow her lawnmower for a couple hours. So I was always kind of an entrepreneur as a kid, and I sort of tripped over the nonprofit challenges that people face. My sister's developmentally disabled. She's 5 years younger than me, and when we realized that she wasn't going to develop like the other kids, even though she appeared normal, physically,
Hmm.
we just realized she was special. And so my mom started taking us to Special Olympics, where my sister was kind of a track star. And she was absolutely the fastest kid, but she's such a good-hearted person. She kind of teaches humans how to be better humans just by the way she acts and the way she is. And she would round that corner and go to hit the tape and win the race, but she'd see her fans in the stands, and the stands are always next to the finish line, and run over and high five them. So I have a lot of photos of my sister taking second on the podium. But what that showed me was that the way the world should work is that we should come around people who are less fortunate or people who are doing something to make the world a more beautiful place and support them. And so growing up around Special Olympics made me just really root for the underdog and see how I could always help to elevate other people and not have things get in the way of them being their best. And of course, I wanted that for myself as well.
Yeah.
And fast forward years later, that it was extremely hard.
All right, back talking with Christian LeFer, founder and CEO of Instant Nonprofit. So Christian, um, all those years watching your sister compete in the Special Olympics had a big impact on you. How did all that get you to where you are today?
Well, fast forward to around 2010, I went to start a nonprofit with a couple of friends of mine. And I said, you guys do these other things. Let me handle this application. I mean, how hard can that be? And I started completing it, had a couple questions, and I would call my agent who was supposedly, assigned to the file and would never, get a response. It's very opaque, this process, very confusing. And, a lot of people find this intimidating. I certainly did. So, when I found out that it would take up to a year to approve a 501(c)(3), I just was kind of morally outraged. If people who want to help people like my sister have to crawl across broken glass, be unsure of what they're even doing on this application that is really convoluted, and then have to wait for a year to even find out if they're approved. That
Hmm.
was just so morally outrageous to me that I said about solving it, and I wasn't going to be satisfied with the answers I got. So I just took the number that I had and I changed the last couple of digits on it. And I knew I'd probably get someone inside the IRS building in the exempt organizations department. I called about 20 or 30 numbers north and south of that number and grilled, begged, cajoled, anything I could get to get information on why is this so ridiculously difficult? What it makes a perfect file in their eyes? What would make their day and make that person not only have everything they need for their checklist, but make them feel like somebody actually cared about their job? And if we could solve that, like we were solving the customer's problem, we might really be onto something. Actually, that was before I had a business, so there wasn't really a customer. But if we could solve the bureaucrat's problem as well as mine, maybe we could get a fast result. So
Yeah.
I curated this whole process that I call the love letter to a bureaucrat, and I submitted the application. And by God, I got an approval in about, I forget what it was, about 35 days, about five weeks,
Yeah.
and that was absolutely astounding. And so I thought maybe I would be onto something. I volunteered to do another one for some folks in town. Same result. And I went from sort of blogger to businessman because I had started writing about this, thinking maybe there's something here. Maybe I can talk to people and get some feedback. And that's how this whole thing was born. And now, 5,000 nonprofits later, we still get very,
Wow.
very fast 18 and 52-day application approvals, uh, bar none. That's the fastest. And, it's kind of like you were in the military. What does a sniper do? They lay in place for sometimes weeks because they want to take one shot at that thing because they're gonna blow the cover. That's the op's gonna be over. And so we really have checks in instant nonprofit where we carefully make sure that that thing is going to go in once. It's going to make that person's day, and it's going to get a fast approval because they're going to sneak off to their desk and have one less file on their desk, which is really what every bureaucrat wants to do. They punch lunch early, everybody's happy.
Wow. Okay. So I got to hear what was this? What was the key? What was the secret? Like, did you actually get some IRS folks on the phone and get
I
some
did.
really
I did. And
intuitive
so
information?
some of the keys that they told me were, well, these files get very thick and people don't put the EIN number. So we watermark the EIN number throughout the file. Now, some of this is proprietary secret sauce, but I'll just share a
Sure.
few of these things. We also organize it with a table of contents so that it reads like a novel. They know exactly where the different elements of the thing, what we call it the sandwich internally, the love letter to a bureaucrat, where are the articles attached? Where's the narrative activities? Where are the board members? All those things, if they can just flip through that, or God forbid they drop this pile of papers in a file room and they have to reassemble it, boy, they sure appreciate when all that stuff is super well organized with a cover sheet. And so just things that would appeal to the problems facing the bureaucrat in an agency where they've made that person's job unnecessarily hard. And being in the military, I'm sure there are things that are very convoluted sometimes, but you just have to follow that process. And so instead of fighting it, try to beat him, we joined him, and we think we have some fans in the agency because we make their job a lot easier, and it's worked out pretty well. 5,000 nonprofits later.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like all my 24 years in the Marine Corps, how many times, higher headquarters, hey, we need numbers on this or we need this. And you'd put something together and then you'd send it to him like, no, we want it in this format. You're like, okay, well,
Right.
why didn't you tell me that to begin with? This kind of reminds me of that. It's like, well, you got to apply for your, uh, okay. What is the term when your nonprofit gets approved? Your determination letter?
Yes,
Yeah.
IRS determination letter.
You're waiting for the determination letter. That means you're a legit nonprofit at that point. But if you go to the IRS and look at what they tell you on how to apply or how to put in for your nonprofit to get its determination letter, a lot of those things you just
Good luck.
mentioned don't really come to the surface. Like you're going to take several stabs at it and not get it right the first time because they don't really they don't if we are the customers of the IRS, they don't really set their customers up for success. They just don't care. They'll figure it out eventually. We'll just turn them down. They'll come back. They'll turn them down. They come back.
That's right. It's either turn them down or a delay, which is just, it's just a temporary denial, right? A delay. The IRS will come back with what's called a request for information, and sometimes these are random. It's like being at the TSA at the airport, and they just want to put you through some extra inspections. Well, we know there are these anti-fraud measures that they inject into the process, and we know why they're actually answering the question. You can't tell by what they're asking. But there's certain things that they want to know. For example, if somebody's going to be operating overseas and they see that they have maybe a project that they're thinking about 2 years out in Kenya in the application. And if you don't put that you are going to run any foreign expenditures through the OFAC terrorism watch list, if you don't do that ahead of time, they are certainly going to come back and ask you that question. Well, why not preempt it? So, because we only do this and we're not like, I'll make up an imaginary company, but Rocket Zoom, where we try to be everything to everyone. This is all we do. We know each of one of those questions. We know them before they're asked, and so we preempt any possible road bump. And so, if we can preempt that, then that person not only will be likely approve and not come back for that additional information, but it's kind of a signal that they're dealing with people who really know this process, and they might as well just get their act together, approve this thing, and move on because we have just absolutely dialed the process.
Yeah. Now, does instant nonprofit, is that your main focus, or do you focus on things that go beyond after you've gotten the determination letter? Like, okay, now you're a nonprofit. Now you're really in the business of raising money and how to go about doing that, or are you focused mostly
Absolutely.
on?
Just like you with EOS, right? You're an EOS coach, and boy, I'd like to learn more about what you do with that because we've been self-implementing EOS inside our company. And from what I understand, you created some software that helps you implement EOS and come up with some of these standard things that you need to do. And boy, I'd like to hear more about that because that's the problem that somebody has after they encounter EOS and decide, yes, I'd like to implement this. Yes, I need some coaching and some help doing that. But then they need to maintain that year over year, and you just can't babysit them all day. We do the same. People's issues, their challenges kind of only begin after we actually successfully deliver that 501(c)(3. They're
Mhm.
incorporated, they have their EIN, they have their tax exempt status approved. And we also provide a raft of things that help them not only execute a board meeting really well, but look good in the process because they're usually sitting there with their friends and colleagues and they don't want to whip out Robert's rules and stumble through it, right? So we give them everything they need. We give a customer everything they need to not only start the nonprofit and have the paperwork, but really feel like they can run it competently for that first year. So we have some training involved with that. The 101 level comes with every launch package. But a lot of people want to subscribe and have us take care of their annual filing. So we do their taxes and their state periodic report to stay in good standing. And along with that, that's called autopilot. Along with that, they get access to office hours year round and some basic training on things that every founder wants to know.
Mhm.
Should they want to go further, we have more advanced training on two main areas, operational and fundraising. And we'll often recommend EOS. We'll maybe talk about the highlights of EOS and why we think it's a great program as a nonprofit becomes mature and they need to have hiring processes that work and SOPs for repetitive activities and all those different things. So that's really how we help the life cycle of the nonprofit is a three-legged stool. We form it, we help maintain it legally and keep people from having to spend money on accountants and lawyers for routine questions with the office support and training, and then the more in-depth training to take them, from zero to $1 million a year, for example. Once they do that, there are plenty of consultants and plenty of people, plenty of books, plenty of programs, but it's in that infancy that the organization, like any company, is most vulnerable to not reaching its goals and petering out because the founder gets overwhelmed with all the different things they have to do because of a lack of systems.
Yeah. Wow. So, what does it look like if someone's looking to start a nonprofit and they contact you? By the way, how does somebody contact you if they're interested in your services?
Absolutely. We are on social, and most of our handles, if you just look up Instant Nonprofit on any of the socials, there we
Mhm.
are. Um, we are also at instantnonprofit.com. And there are really three or four ways that somebody can learn more or, dip their toe in the water and either go in the kiddie pool or jump in right off the diving board in the deep end
Mhm.
and get started with us. And so we have a quiz that just takes 10 seconds and it helps people qualify themselves. What is the right path for me? Am I
Mhm.
starting a small nonprofit that's not a complicated like school, hospital, or church? Or am I starting a more high budget nonprofit where the IRS has a more robust application process? And or the type of nonprofit that requires that more robust application. So people want to know that, and in the age where we have the attention span of a gnat, we've made it so that people can understand and make that decision just within a few seconds, and know that we're not just out to sell some package. We're not, you know, Tony Little on the app with selling the Abflex in the middle of the night, right? Would sell 1 million units. Where did they go? They went straight into the garage, and everybody, most of the people, 80%, 90% stayed fat. We want people to actually succeed with this nonprofit. So we help people get into the right thing at the level that they're needing, including just learning more. And for podcast listeners, we have a great gift for your listeners where if they go to instantnonprofit.com/podcast,
Mhm.
they can get a free version of our startup kit, which is 10 lessons that tell them everything they need to do if they're even considering whether a nonprofit might serve their needs. And there's worksheets and all kinds of stuff so they can come up with a great name. They can boil their mission down to one statement. They can do all of the things that they might want to think about prior to starting so that they're not lost in this sea of information out there because the internet is so full of old information that's outdated, misinformation, or just straight up disinformation designed to scare people into buying things they don't need. We have a one price policy. We're like Southwest. Of course, you want to take a bag on your flight. So everything you need is in one package. We don't even start nonprofits unless we're going to get them tax exempt status because that's really what everyone wants.
Yeah. Like, is it fairly common for when you first make contact with somebody or someone comes to you? Is it fairly common that they, after they looking into it a little bit, they're like, yeah, you know what? I guess the nonprofit really isn't for us. It's probably not what we're looking to do.
Most people that get in contact with us are actually sort of closer to the bottom of the thought process, and they know that they probably could benefit from a nonprofit. And really, it's just a matter of when, not if.
Hmm.
Um, but that's where we're able to help people with free resources. The quiz is one. Um, the uh, the startup kit podcast gift is another. And then the third is just booking a call. We have great people that are experts. The person that does a lot of our calls with prospective customers actually ran a nonprofit that she took from 200,000 to $3.5 million. So we don't just robots answering the phone. We have real live people who can walk you through, test your idea, and see if it's something that would make sense for you. And what we often find is not that a nonprofit isn't going to work for someone. We find that they should have a nonprofit alongside of their for profit business. So that if they have an EOS implementation practice and they start the Joe Crane EOS Foundation, that's a tax deductible, non corporate taxable venue where you can teach people, maybe young people in high school, that you're teaching about systems of business. You can do all of that for free with tax deductible grants and money that you get from schools or from government grants or from individuals who just think what you're doing is great. And then that, since it's called the Joe Crane EOS Foundation, that reflects positively that you are a good steward of resources. You're a good corporate citizen. You are out to help people. So it actually can help improve the attractiveness and the vibe, the values that you're projecting with your for profit business, because that big corporation then says, this is the kind of guy I want to do business with. And so hopefully I'm selling you right now on the idea of opening a foundation alongside of your business and that it's not an either or question.
Yeah. And then, are you familiar with the term a hybrid?
Yeah, well, in this context, I'm not sure, but
Yeah, like I think I'll always like the best example is like it's a cooking school, where the cooking school is a nonprofit, but then they have a bakery. They actually sell the things that
Oh
the
yeah,
cooking school makes out in front, and that's actually the for-profit section of it. But
that's a
they're
great way to go.
inextricably linked. They're but
Yeah, kind of like Goodwill. Goodwill is a massive nonprofit. They
uh-huh.
give people jobs. They have stores everywhere. They make money, right? So this term nonprofit isn't really the best. I sort of wish it was for purpose. Or overseas, they use the term NGO, and we've heard that a little bit in the news, where some people use NGOs for purposes that we might disagree with. But hey,
Yeah.
it's a free country. Let's keep it that way. I like to say that these are for purpose not companies, or that nonprofits can make excess revenue. They can keep excess revenue. And as a matter of fact, if they pile up excess revenue at the end of the year, which a company would call profit, it's not taxed. So if you were to bring in $1 million and only spend a half million with your nonprofit, that 500,000 that's sitting in the corporate account at the end of the year, unlike any other business type, is non-taxable. And you could pile that up year over year because maybe you're doing a capital campaign. Maybe you want to purchase a building for your Goodwill, for your EOS, what foundation, whatever you want. That's the one of the two distinctions about a 501(c)(3) tax deductible nonprofit that's different than a formal business. In many other ways, it is a business.
Hmm.
The other main attraction for the tax exempt nonprofit is that when people donate that $50,000 toward the cause they believe in, they don't get taxed on 200,000 W-2 revenue or 200,000 in their business as profit. They actually get taxed on 150. And so that might actually drop them down an entire tax bracket and make them money. They might give $10,000 and pay 20,000 less in taxes because of reducing that top line. And that's something that is really attractive to donors and philanthropists. And you know, that's not usually the only reason they give, but it sure makes it easier to get people to donate for a cause they believe in if they're going to benefit and everyone else is going to benefit as well.
Yeah, having been involved in several nonprofits over the years, what's amazing, a lot of people don't realize is there is a lot of money out there.
Oh,
It
yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean it's easy to get it, but there is a lot of money out there, and there's a lot of excess, and corporations and individuals have lots of money they're looking to put to good use.
Yeah, it's called the CSR budget with a lot of companies, corporate social responsibility. Companies want to be seen as corporate good stewards, good corporate citizens, if you will,
Hmm.
that are contributing back. And more now that we have the internet and people can kind of look into whether you have child slave labor making your phones or whatever. People want to look behind the values of the company, and if they see something like this, it can be really helpful to project the kind of company that you want to represent. And like in your good to great, I'll call it, most recent podcast episode, those are one of the things that makes a great company, because not only does it look good, and sometimes you'll see greenwashing with environmental causes or whatever, and it's kind of paper, but it's not real. Employees, we have real employee retention problems in different areas, and it's a lot of money to lose a good employee and have to replace them and train and all that stuff. And studies show you can drive your employee happiness and your employee retention through the roof if you involve your employees or team members in a long-term nonprofit project where they feel like the company is actually making a difference and that their work is making a difference, because you're sponsoring one Friday a month where everybody goes and builds houses for Habitat or whatever. And so that can much more than pay for itself for you to actually do good in the world. And I love when those studies come out, because it only bolsters something I truly believe in, which is that we can together, we have voluntary, we don't want a gun to our head. I don't think we want the kind of government that forces us to do good, because
Hmm.
it's really needs to be voluntary. We can change the arc of history by getting together and rolling up our sleeves, and government's not coming to save us, and people don't trust church and religion and all kinds of different institutions. Their alma maters matter less than ever. How can we create an identity for ourselves? How can young people create an identity of meaning by doing good things in the world and us getting together and solving problems that we know how to solve on the ground, and we're not leaving them to some faraway bureaucrat? I think most people can agree with that. And I am on kind of a maniacal mission to uh, share that message with everyone and invite them that maybe if a nonprofit is a good idea for you, or if you're thinking about it, How can you find out without a predatory sales cycle and blowing up your inbox with high pressure sales? This really needs to be something that you arrive at and feel whole and have integrity with, because it's a big commitment. But boy, it's really rewarding.
Yeah. Do you know how many nonprofits there are in the U.S.?
There are just about 2 million.
Okay.
There's about $4.3 trillion under management in the nonprofit sector. It actually represents about 1 in 10 jobs, surprisingly, in the
Wow.
US.
Really?
And private individuals and corporations give, I think we're up to $500 billion per year. And if you think all that's being used efficiently or even claimed, right, and that grants don't go unclaimed, you'd be incorrect about that. There's more money, and just like the taxi industry was disrupted by Uber, there's opportunity for new entrants to come in. And maybe if you don't like what the American Heart or Lung Association or whatever, these big organizations that have been around for 50 years, they're slow. They don't know how to implement technology and take advantage of the opportunities that we have today. And a small, fiery, uh, up to date couple of people can come in, create a nonprofit, offer some innovation, and solve problems at a much faster rate. And there are philanthropists who are wiser than ever. They're becoming like expert investors, and they are ready to write checks for people who really want to solve today's problems. And boy, do we need it.
Yeah. There's always, you're right. There's always people with money that are looking for a place or an organization to put their money to good use towards, and they, the 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 mantra that that organization projects on a regular basis is being watched. And if you get into the nonprofit business, you definitely have to have all that in line. And there's always people watching. You don't know they're watching until they come to you and say, "Hey, we got some money. We're interested in doing something."
That's right. And they can be researched. They sort of make it known the kinds of things they're interested in. So you can just do research and find out what people in your community who have businesses or some money, maybe they inherited money, maybe they sell a company. That press release is in the newspaper. You can learn what causes get them excited. And I really want to stress that millionaires, billionaires, business owners, they really are at a human level just like the rest of us. And they're getting something out of giving to a nonprofit that's beyond money because they've got plenty of money. They're
Mm-hmm.
getting the feeling in their job, boy, they're so busy. They have families, they have demands. They're managing businesses and companies. They don't have time to go to the soup kitchen. So you're actually adding to their life and not taking away by getting money from them, by giving them an opportunity to live a bigger life through the work you're doing. And once you flip that concept around, instead of it becoming selling, you're actually inviting them to an opportunity they couldn't otherwise have. And that is so precious. It's like the MasterCard commercial, night out with the family, $300, tickets to the game for everyone, another 150. The experience that they have is priceless. And that's absolutely true. And if people flip that around, especially nonprofit founders often don't want to ask for money, they don't want to impose. But if you can flip that mindset around, it really becomes fun to invite people to a bigger life by supporting your nonprofit. That's what we teach people.
Yeah. Hey, what's your opinion, or can you shed some light on? I've seen this in a number of veteran nonprofits where people people tout the veteran organization that's maybe not really big, but everybody that works there, no one gets paid a salary. The CEO doesn't make any money, so their heart's really in it. Versus, oh, this organization over here, they've switched over, they've gone corporate. Now they got a CEO making 250 a year, and all these other staff members that get paid a big salary. We don't like them anymore because they've got people making money on their staff.
Absolutely. I think that sounds good to people, but in practice, I'm not sure how high it is on the priority list. Just like when they poll
Mm-hmm.
people on what political issues they care about. People might think that certain things are important, but then when ranked against the other things like pocketbook economic issues, those rule because people want cheap eggs and milk and gas much more than they want some obscure policy objective. And it's kind of the same with this. People can support the kinds of organizations that they want to, but in my belief that there's nothing wrong with doing well while doing good. That doesn't mean you should have executives being excessively compensated and having a $500,000 salary for a $2 million organization. But you do want to attract people who know how to use resources efficiently, how to build a team, and sometimes they've had that experience and they have to leave. They're not independently wealthy yet. They can't make a dollar like Elon Musk for running SpaceX. He makes a dollar, I believe it is, per year. All his compensation is based on the performance of the organization and the stock price, et cetera. So I think that's a great model. And I think, again, this is a voluntary society. I really want to keep it that way. And so the marketplace often dictates how well these things work and whether they're kind of just good in concept or good in practice. But I know running a for-profit corporation as we are and having a nonprofit alongside of it as we do, that my staff are independently wealthy. They can't afford to, they would work here for free if they could. And they often sacrifice and work at Instant Nonprofit because of this culture that we have and how fun it is and how great it is to come to work. They might work here for a little bit less than they could go, at the big pharma or some other corporation. But I'm okay with paying people so that they can feed their families and have the things that they want to do. And I think that's okay for for nonprofits too, because if they're achieving the good at the scale that nonprofits really are out to do, it's pennies at the end of the day for the lives that are changed.
Right. Well, Christian, one more time, Instant Nonprofit, pretty much find it anywhere, even instantnonprofit.com. Do want to give you the last word. We're about out of time. A lot of military folks, a lot of veterans, military spouses get into the nonprofit world. A lot of people want to start their own nonprofit to get out of the military. If you're talking to somebody on their way out of the military looking to start a nonprofit, especially from the military community, what kind of advice comes to mind?
One of my favorite, most beloved team members is a military spouse. We've actually recruited military spouses to work through internship programs, for people who are in that position. And it's really wonderful because they people serve in the military because of the mission. It's certainly not for the pay, at least at the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, um, what we find is that all of these things we talked about, whether it's starting a nonprofit and the process and all that stuff, is really secondary. Yes, it's important. We do have the best experience, the best deliverables, all of that in the industry, and we tirelessly try to improve. But what we're really giving people is the courage, right? Just like they get from service in the military, they're getting the courage to take that step and that they can do this and that this might sound a little scary, but that they've got the structure and an organization of caring people who have got their back. And once you get through basic and you get done dealing with that drill sergeant, the people love the camaraderie in the military, and that's what we try to provide people so that when they get into the thicket, they get into the jungle, they get into the day to day, what do I do with this situation? How do I close this donor? How do I build an organization that's going to last and doesn't overwhelm me? They've got us as a support, just like they have the military and the structure and the organization and the operating procedures and all those things so they can excel in what they're doing. And that's really a great model that I can say we are out to emulate. And a lot of the stuff we learn, whether it's EOS or whatever, comes from people who have served. So I want to thank you, Joe, for your service. And I want to honor my dad for his, and anyone out there who is serving in the military. We fully support you. And this team celebrates every Veterans Day with all our hearts. And we want to continue to do that.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Christian. I appreciate it. Appreciate you being here, sharing your entrepreneurial success story, and look forward to seeing instant nonprofit success in the future.
Thank you so much. Look forward to it.
All
Take
right.
care.
We're Oscar.
Thanks for having me.